welcome to the Fretboard Journal Podcast. I am your host, Jason Verlinde, the publisher of the Fretboard Journal magazine, and this is week 2 of the String Theories Takeover of the Fretboard Journal Podcast. Before we get underway, a huge thanks to our sponsors, Mike and Mike's Guitar Bar, the amazing vintage instrument store and repair center located right here in Seattle, Washington. Follow them on Instagram or their Reverb store. See what all the fuss is about, and then tell them the Fretboard Journal sent you if you ever buy anything from them or visit their showroom. Peghead Nation is also sponsoring the podcast. If you want to learn guitar, mandolin, or banjo, this is the place for you. You can get your first month free or $20 off of any annual subscription with the discount code Fretboard when you check out. Our friends at iZotope, who make some truly mind-bogglingly great software to help you with audio mastering, or if there's any glitches in your audio, weird noises, anything you want to filter out, are giving you all 10% off your order with the discount code FRET10. And Stringjoy Strings is sponsoring the podcast once again. One of the coolest string companies around. They're making acoustic and electric guitar strings as well as mandolin strings now. You can get 10% off your first order with the discount code FRETBOARD. So I am headed to the NAMM show. When you hear this, I will be walking the halls of the Anaheim Convention Center, seeing all the latest and greatest gear. I'm going to be sharing some of my unfiltered thoughts on our Patreon, patreon.com/fretboard_journal. It's not going to be the typical gear demo videos. We don't need to do that. You can find those at every other media outlet. But I'll give you my unbiased thoughts on what was cool, what was not cool, anybody interesting I run into. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'll probably also make a bonus podcast episode just for our Patreon followers. So those are our sponsors. In the conversation you're about to hear, you might hear some other bigger brands that should be sponsoring this podcast. And if anybody works at any of those brands, reach out to me, podcast@fretboardjournal.com. But basically what's happening here is Ethan Sherman and Adam Levy, two great friends of the Fretboard Journal, two incredible musicians, put out this book called String Theories. It's 200 pages of life hacks and music tips and just ways to kind of think about things differently to maybe get out of a musical rut. I loved it. I know a lot of you loved it. If anybody needs to order it, there's a link in the show notes. You can get it directly mailed to you. And I basically love the book so much, I've handed the keys to the Fretboard Journal podcast off to Adam and Ethan for the month. And this is installment 2 of 4 of their Fretboard Journal podcast takeover. For this week's episode, it's a pretty loose one. You get to be a fly on the wall with 3 incredible musicians talking shop. It's Ethan and Adam and Mason Stoops talking about all the important things in the world: coffee, gratitude, Marshalls. They kind of cover it all. There are some true words of wisdom in here. I hope you enjoy it. And as always, if you want to support what I do, if you want to support this amazing podcast and all the guests that we have, get a subscription to the Fretboard Journal magazine. Our 53rd issue is out now. I know you will love it. Ben Harper's on the cover. And now we will talk coffee and the PRS of coffee makers and life and so much more with Mason Stoops, Adam Levy, and Ethan Sherman.
The direction that I've gone as a guitar player is the opposite of the direction I want to go. I want to find the best, but also I want the PRS of coffee makers, basically. Like something that's just going to absolutely get me there without, I don't need to get personal with it. I don't need it to really reflect who I am. I just need it to absolutely crush making like a great cup of coffee.
Most efficiently.
Yeah. Because I mean, I've gotten my ratios to a place that I think are maybe good. I've gotten, the gear dialed. I've got a fancy kettle that I overpaid for. I've got.
I haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
That's the next.
You want the neck and you want the thing with the reader and
because you want to be able to control the pour, right?
Oh my goodness! Look at this.
Yeah.
Thank you, Benj.
I'm your servant.
No.
So we're in his house.
Oh.
But I just feel like every time I then go to any coffee shop at all and I have like a cup of coffee, it's like significantly better than anything I've made.
Well, they're professionals.
Yeah. But
they do it all day, every day. You just do it once when you wake up.
Well, what am I getting all this gear for if not to,
You can extend that analogy back to the guitar and say, all right, like I go to a show, I see somebody who spends their life doing it.
Yeah.
Why did I get all this gear?
Coffee, though? I mean, yes, of course.
But then what's the Okay, when you get the scale and you start working on because Mason, you also said, oh, we're with Mason Stoops.
Hi.
And we're live.
Yeah.
Episode 2, and we're already having guests.
Third episode's going to be wild.
Yeah.
It's
going to be tough to top.
Yeah.
Should we just go to Sweetwater? Should we just go to Indiana and go to the Sweetwater campus and just go all in?
Yeah.
Go down the slide.
Yeah. There's a slide?
There's a slide at the Sweetwater headquarters.
Whoa.
I've gone down it.
Wow.
I'm not trying to brag this early in the episode, but I've ridden the Sweetwater slide.
This is why you're here. This is why we invited you.
I played a gig this summer in Indianapolis, and Mitch Gallagher came to the gig, and he sat in the front row, and all the guys in the band were like, dude, Mitch is here. I'm kind of nervous. It's like kind of awesome.
Wow.
Shout out to Mitch Gallagher. One of the things we've been doing, in this long chain of 2 podcasts is thinking about New Year's resolutions.
Oh, no.
I don't know if that's something you do, but I wanted to at least ask you about it.
The funnel goes both ways. It's like it could be a broad thing that will hopefully be significant, or it's like the funnel going the other way where it's like a very tiny little change or a little intent with the guitar. And I've thought about both, and I have murky answers for either.
Both are cool.
But if you told me maybe what one of yours was,
I should have sent you the first app because we talked about it for we each shared them for half an hour.
well, if you gave me the cliff notes.
You go first.
And how you guys are doing with it, because it's been a week now. So I'm wondering if
this is really where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, this is an update.
Yeah.
A progress report.
The rubber bridge. This is where the rubber meets the bridge.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, I'm gonna go wait in the car.
Well, for me, the thing that I wanted to do was had to do with my practice routine,
of course,
and to let go of things that I've been trying to get myself to do for 30 years or whatever. Okay, maybe that's not what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Because I wind up, then I feel bad. Last year I decided I was going to learn, whatever, all the songs on the White Album and, learn all the guitar parts from the White Album or et cetera,
Yeah.
And, for all the years I've been playing guitar, that winds up being a lot of things. And if I don't get to them, I want to let go of those things.
Yeah.
Just okay, what am I really interested in right now instead of what was I interested in 3 years ago or 10 years ago that I'm still beating myself up about. So one way that really I tried to do something was I have this bookshelf of lots of guitar books, and I decided to give away almost all of them. I held on to 2 because when I look at them, instead of seeing this library, this great resource of here's all this, I was looking at it, oh geez, this is all the stuff that I should be practicing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that sucks.
So I decided to give it all away and find, people who would be oh, dude, a book about Dadgad? Awesome. I really want that book right now. And so that's one thing I've been doing. And that was really my resolution, was to free myself from old shoulds and just think about what I really want to be doing right now. And then in the margins down below, in the footnotes, there's this astrology guy, Rob Bresney.
Okay.
He has a thing he's done for years called Real Astrology or something. And he was talking about, I'm a Sagittarius, and the horoscope from right around New Year's had to do with, he was talking about some city that had gotten way too organized, and then the people that lived there decided they were going to rewild it.
Whoa.
Or maybe it had to do with, I'm totally blowing it because I don't remember exactly what it was. But again, I came back to in my practice, instead of having a lot of super set routines that wind up reinforcing what I've been doing for all the years I've been playing, how could I rewild my playing and just get to the nature of who am I and what am I saying?
You said you got rid of a bunch of books, right?
Yeah.
But you kept 2?
Yeah.
What were they?
Exactly. Yeah, what were the 2 that you kept?
This Wayne Dyer book. No. One was the Bach partitas and sonatas for solo violin.
Okay.
And
hoping it'd be easier. I was hoping it'd be like just pictures of pedals. That's one I still just, but still I recontextualize it. I've had that book for 25 years. And so I've returned to it, but instead of like beating myself up because I haven't already memorized all this music and I haven't like made a record of Adam Levy plays the Bach party, like I'm just playing it because it's fun and it's beautiful. And I open it up to any page and spend, half an hour or an hour just playing it for me, not because, you're supposed to, or because so I kept that. And I think that'll be a companion for life. And the other was this Jimmy Weibel book called Classical Country. And it's his Jimmy Weibel.
Yeah, it's his first 6 etudes and a bunch of warm-up stuff before you get to any music. There's there's like 40-something little warm-up things that are all pretty short. And the 2 reasons I kept that is because I had studied with Jimmy and his music means a lot to me.
Yeah.
Also, it's a rare out-of-print book, and if I give it away, I may never see it again.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit just like a different thing. It wasn't like some book I ordered on Amazon and, I'm never going to learn all the triad pairs.
You mean it wasn't this book?
Oh, shoot.
This is for you, Mason.
I was hoping you would bring
What did I give you? Because people can't see this.
This is a copy of a book I believe is called String Theories, Tips, Challenges, and Reflections for the Lifelong Guitarist. And it's written by Adam Levy and Ethan Sherman, who are joining me on my podcast here today. Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you so much for coming. Just want to get started with asking, what inspired this book? I mean, first of all, I want to say it's much thicker than I thought it was going to be, but also smaller. So interesting choices in both sides.
Well, I got a friend named Mason Stoops, and basically for what I contributed to this, I stole everything he's ever told me that I thought was interesting and pretended that it was mine.
And which page is that on?
26.
Okay, great. Wow, this is a lot of stuff in here. It's a beautiful book.
Thanks.
I'm so proud of you guys because I remember when you guys were first talking about it, and now I'm physically holding it.
We got it done. It's pretty crazy.
I just need 2 more books in my collection, and I'll have my New Year resolution dialed.
Sounds great.
One is a violin Bach thing called
Partitas and Sonatas. For solo violin. And then the other one is a Jimmy Weibel book called
Classical Country.
Going Country.
Well, yeah, you might need one if you're trying to get the 57 to sit, at the right spot,
Well, that's the thing.
You might need
12th fret. How thick is...
That's what we want to know. Yeah. How many pages?
How many more of these do you need?
Yeah.
Right. Boy, that would be a good selling thing for us if we could, like on Amazon, if we could bundle our book with a 57 and you need to buy 5 copies of the book.
But it's going to get you the exact height you're going to want.
If you guys
get the right spot on your speaker.
This podcast brought to you by Shure Microphones. Shure Microphones. Only the best will do. Use coupon code Ethan75 and they'll send you just a box.
75.
They'll send you 75 used SM57s that have just kind of accumulated in your house. You don't know where they came from. You've never bought one, but you've got a drawer of them. I want to get into the kind of podcasting where you insert the ads that you want and hope that they eventually, because I would like that Mocha Master. So I could be like, this podcast is sponsored by the Mocha Master.
And you just
amazing. If I do a legit ad, what are they going to do? Not Give me one.
Yeah, I
Or
like
not.
that. Yeah, manifesting
Your own ad.
advertisement.
Yeah.
Be the algorithm that you want to see
I
in
mean,
the world.
like, at least then you're going to be shilling for things that you like truly believe in.
Well, isn't that the dream?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, don't wait. We've talked about this before.
Mm-hmm.
It's like make your time valuable and then sell it. Like make your podcast valuable and then sell it. So who are the heaviest hitters in podcast advertising? Find out. It's just start pushing them.
Yeah.
We want in. I'm just saying, sometimes it works from the, you got to come in.
Hey, man, I just work here.
I want to back up a little bit. Like we're kind of circling around this idea of coffee talk and gear talk, and what's the difference between going to an expert and then your best intended homebrew at home. And I remember early pandemic, 3 or 4 years ago, you were asking me about home recording, and I was like, just get a 57 and a couple of things and start. And now, like, your home recording thing is super advanced.
It's true.
So how did you get from just get a 57 to, top of the game at home?
I'm really curious what the tipping point was.
I'm curious too, because it's like when you haven't seen a relative for a while, or like when you haven't seen someone for a while, if you see them every day, it's like the change is kind of unnoticeable or subtle. But if you go 6 months and you haven't seen someone and they had a crazy haircut, it's like, whoa, And so I have to think about this because I remember that conversation with you, and I remember how overwhelmed I used to, and still sometimes definitely feel about home recording. It's such like a void of possibilities in a way that's, to me, intimidating. It's like the menus on pedals or presets that are, it's like, well, if it can do anything, where do I even begin? And that's how I felt about home recording. But I got a 57 off of reverb.com, sponsored by reverb.com, where they give their favorite podcast guests 20% off on anything they want. So use coupon code
Mason20.
But I got a 57. Joel from Chase Bliss Audio, we did a trade where I did some demos and he got me an Apollo unit. And that was my first. And they were so bad at first. I remember I was sitting in my room in Los Feliz. I had my little 57. I think I had a pile of books on my desk with the 57 here kind of pointing at the guitar. And I was like, this is pretty sick. This is like, because I sit here, Mike's there, laptop's here, Paula's here.
#workflow.
Yeah, like this is, and then I listened back and it was so bad. It was so like I was trying to play like a Mississippi John Hurt thing or something. There's anything to hear it back. It was so exciting just to finally hear yourself back in your own. And it sounded so bad. And then it sounded bad for a while. Actually, okay, this is going to sound like an ad. But
can I ask you a question real quick? Was the pandemic the first time you were recording at home in this way, like with an audio interface and doing your own recording software?
The pandemic was the first time I did session, like I was hired to do it. And where I finally got results that I thought were like passable. And then since then they've gotten better. Honestly, this is what I was going to say, sounds like an ad, but I was always intimidated by Pro Tools. I was always intimidated by, I tried Logic, but that's like Pro Tools with like a hat. So it's like you're still kind of scared. The UA people did Luna, and I downloaded it because it's free.
Yep.
#UA. Coupon code Mason90. And that pretty quickly like changed. It's really, for me, like it was accessible.
Yeah.
And they got this like this tape plugin that's right there. So it's like turn on tape and it's like, oh, it does sound a little better. I don't know. That helped. And then I got one of the aux boxes, and that kind of helped me kind of interface a lot of the amps I was used to using and using, because miking an amp in your room is risky, or for me, it's like unforgivable. It's unforgiving when it's not right.
Yeah, and you don't want to bother whoever
it's
in
just
your house. And so this is interesting because like I've been in this zone for a while where that is the nut that I'm trying to crack.
Well,
Because I haven't bought an aux box. Right now, when I'm recording electric guitar, it's direct. Not like totally direct, but I'm using a Strymon Iridium.
I hear those are very good.
I like it.
Yeah.
Like, I bought it as a practice tool originally, so I could, play electric guitar in hotel rooms on tour, because I don't like playing electric guitar, like,
period.
well, I don't like playing electric guitar unplugged.
That makes sense.
When you're playing electric guitar, you're playing the amp too.
100%. Almost, yeah. Like, kind of, yeah.
It's totally one combined instrument.
Yeah.
Right. So if you, at least for me, if I don't have one without the other, it's going to like affect like touch and stuff.
I know.
You know all about it. So having the Iridium has been interesting to sort of get some facsimile of an amp and a cabinet. But, you also see these dudes who, have all these amps. And, I think of, somebody like Tom Bukovac or like any natural dude where he's got his big rack.
Oh, I know.
Of like his basement and his AC30 and his whatever.
Incredible.
And
in cartage.
Yeah. Man.
The home recording rig has now evolved. I eventually sold my aux. It was fantastic, but I got to a point where I started using, I got a mic that I really like, which is a Sony C380 or something, which is not what it is at all.
Is that like an old ribbon mic?
No, it's not. It has a 9-volt battery in it, and Eric from Uniform Music recommended it. And it sounds good on vocals. It sounds phenomenal on acoustic. It just sounds, so I have a mic that I really like. Tony Berg also taught me early. It's like more than, you can, kind of like guitars. Like, you can use any microphone if your preamp is good. And it's like, if you have a really great amp, like, kind of any guitar, you'll get something cool out of a lame guitar, like some old shitty guitar can still give you a cool result. But if you have a really bad amp, like, that doesn't matter if you have like a 59 Les Paul, it's gonna. Right. So in that way, I got a preamp that I really love, this little Highland Dynamics little tube desktop preamp. So I have a mic into there, a little tube compressor, and just that simple chain direct now has been like, and like, to me, the final say is like, if the client is happy and they're, no one, if they don't like email you back being like, is that direct? What are you using an amp emulator? If they don't ask, if they're just stoked, it's like, you won. Not in a trickery way, but it's like in a, like, we did the thing. This serves the song. Yeah. It sounds good.
There's so much like fetishizing in the professional musician world of these very specific pieces of gear, right? And if you take like seeing it out of the equation, a lot of it just comes down to, is this helping or is it hurting the music? Is it having any impact at all?
Yeah.
And so in conclusion, gear matters, but also gear doesn't matter.
I feel like gear matters in going up the hill, it's like in learning something or like getting like a vocabulary. But as soon as you're there, like once you're like, I think about this all the time with like cables, how like they really, even last night I was in bed and I was watching some guy on Instagram was comparing in like 15 seconds, like 5 different cables. He's like, John Mayer uses this one. Then I got this one off Amazon. And he just did a blind shootout, just playing one chord. It's like, oh my gosh, yeah, you really do hear, it's crazy how different they all sound. And so you think about that and sometimes even stress about it. And there were years in my life that I stressed about it because it's like, gosh, if I can save an inch from each patch cable on my pedal board, that adds up to like a foot of capacitance that I'm going to get back. Think about all this stuff.
All that high end.
But as soon as you're in a session, and you're there and you're recording, it's like the last thing on your mind. And it's also the last thing you can afford to have on your mind because you're just, ideas are coming and the artist is there and the producer's trying. So you end up like plugging. I asked Will at Sound City for a patch cable the other day. He just brought like a 20-foot monster cable. And I was like, Will, and he's like,
just to put between pedals?
2 pedals. Yeah. Okay, a VB2 going into my board.
Right.
And so that's like, we're at the window. And of course you're going because I do a lot of stereo out of my board, the amps are in a different room. So we'll use like headphone extenders, which are not for guitar, but they can at least let you lengthen cables that you don't have because you weren't planning on running like 50 feet of stuff. Like, all to say, as soon as you get there and you're making the thing, the last thing on your mind is like capacitance and tone. And it's more like, how do I just get my board to that amp in that room? Here's 2 headphone extenders on the wall.
Do we like this sound?
Yeah, it's just like and that, I don't know, I don't want to say the yin yang, but like the balance of like the intent you can give the gear and like the ideas you can put into it are valuable only to the point of what you get out of them. And to me, they're completely different worlds, and they're still both very qualified. I still love gear, and
you love gear more than anyone I know.
Yeah, I know. But as soon as you're on the gig or you're in this, it's like you just use the guitar that's there, or use the amp that's there.
Are patch cables directional?
Okay. No. Yes. Spiritually, no. Or spiritually, yes. Because here's where, me and Justin, I'm blanking on it, but the engineer I used to work with on the gig I was on years ago, he would like fully allow me to go like crazy. And this was like kind of when I was peak, like gear guy, Mm-hmm. And we sat in a rehearsal at SIR waiting for the artist. And he's like, I was reading online that there's like potentially all this like, there's, it's possible that like cables are directional and that like they sound better plugged in one way than the other. And so of course immediately it was like, well, let's take every one of my cables out. Cause I had these, Austin Hooks made me these yellow cables. Sorry. And, we plugged in every one and then we marked which way we liked it, right? With like red tape. And to this day, all my yellow cables have like a red end.
Oh.
And so we did figure out, like, we think it sounds better this way. Like we listened to it, we swear you could hear it, Right. What's funny is now I'm at the point where I just enjoy choosing. Mm. So when I make a new yellow cable, I just pick, I'm like, this one, and I wrap that in red. And then when I'm in a session, sometimes I'll be like, oh, red, okay, that goes amp, And then sometimes I'll be like, you know what? I'm a rebel today.
It becomes another variable for you to have fun with.
Yeah, so it started as something that I was like really listening to and like, and this is kind of a spiritual take in how I've approached a lot of gear now, but where it did come from a place of like being really discerning and like actually trying to find out if they sounded better. And then it's evolved into just making a choice of just like, this is the way I've decided this cable sounds better. Like, because this was in the moment. And,
I think I've almost gone the opposite way. Mm-hmm. Like one thing that's always kept me from like really going in on gear is that I just have never fully trusted myself. I'm always skeptical. I'm always like, how much of this is psychological? Probably all of it. And so like, what's the point? Right. And so that was my starting point, and that kept me from, I never would have gone there.
I remember.
Right. And now I've gone in the other direction where I'm like, I'm actually a little more analytical about it now. And like, I want to check out all, the possibilities and see if any of it matters.
And you're doing these like killer gigs right now too, where you're playing a lot of electric guitar.
Playing a ton of electric guitar.
Yeah. I mean, now you've got to meet your maker as far as tone.
Yeah. I want to bring it.
Yeah.
It's not one or the other. It's both hands.
Well, yeah, both. Yeah. It's one feeds the other.
And, feeds the other. And like don't kill yourself over small things and try to have as much fun with it.
Or anything.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are your New Year's resolutions?
Nice. Wait, but you haven't said yours.
Macro, to be less specific.
Okay.
And to make more open-ended ones. So on a micro level, that's open up my recording software every day. Doesn't matter what I do. I just want to make sure I open it. Play tunes, learn tunes.
Nice.
Show up for my community.
Oh.
Stuff like that.
That's really sweet. The community, I mean, we all are, I feel like where we're at as a result of like a community that we've been a part of for years, you know?
Totally. Totally. And
I'm at a point where it's very easy to like, you know, I really need to go to ETA tonight.
well, now you can't because it closed.
Well, I know, but I just, you know, just the spiritual, like where
Yeah.
it's like, well, now we're all, everyone in the community when we got here and we're like, what are we doing? You know, and now everyone's busy, which is very cool, but it's hard. It's been harder to show up.
Yeah.
Right.
So maybe I'll incorporate a little bit of that into my New Year's resolution that I already had planned for sure.
It's important. And yeah, like you said, when you're pulled in a bunch of different directions, it can be very easy to let that fall by the wayside.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm trying to use the free time that I have these days to do that. I was telling Adam before you got here, I went and saw Jim Oblong play
I wanted to go
last night.
He's so good.
He is
bananas. Yeah.
Like,
absolutely true.
oh my God.
I know.
Like, he kind of makes you want to, like, you're already a little bit closer to that in your thing, but he kind of makes me question, like, what am I doing? Should I go get a thumb pick?
I know.
Should I go get a Marshall?
I did my first gig with Marshalls.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it.
What was that gig?
It was Mumford and Sons, and it was at a theater. It was like a secret show they did in LA a couple months ago. And they've got like a practice room that they set up on tour where they have like a drum set and keys. So if there's like a new song or like a guest artist, like we can like rehearse.
Without going to stage.
Yeah. And in that room, there's been these two Marshall combos. I don't know what they are. They've got kind of the older Marshall logo on them. I think, actually, maybe they don't. This is just maybe what I'm inserting with my imagination. But either way, we did a rehearsal. Solis was there. This was like during ACL earlier in like fall of last year. And I was playing just direct into that. And I was kind of like, this feels really good. I'm used to like super reverbs on that stage or something Fendery. I've just always been a Fender amps guy.
Yeah.
But something about it felt really good under my hands. And I just remembered that. And I was driving to the gig and I called like my tech on that gig basically and was like, are those Marshalls like accessible right now? Or they've been, he's like, I mean, they're back in the truck. I was like, well, if it's not a huge thing, I'm just kind of curious because I remembered really liking them. And so they did, they switched them out. And I played that like, I don't know if I touched the knobs even. It felt so good. It sounded awesome. And then they took them away and the gig was over and I've just been left to wonder what that was. Like, was it the amps themselves? Is it EL84s? I don't know.
Was it your head?
Or all three?
Probably all three.
But
if I were to hazard a guess.
Man, it was awesome.
Whoa.
Have you ever marshaled? Like in a sincere way?
There's a story in this book about...
Yes, I'll go to that right now.
Yeah, actually.
About Marshall amps?
Well, about you did like that Trevor Dunn record and had to play through like a Marshall preamp or something.
Yeah. I mean, that was the most time I've spent with Marshalls, but it's very different from what you're talking about.
Have you heard this?
No.
It rips.
I made this record. Well, I didn't make it. I was part of a record. Trevor Dunn is a bass player. He was in the band Mr. Bungle forever, and then Fantomas. And he's a bassist, composer. And he wrote this trio record that was mostly through composed music, some improv, but he wanted it to be really heavy. And in preparation for making the record, he gave me a cassette. And one side had a bunch of Melvin's songs on it. And the other side had Rain in Blood, which I had never heard, nor had I heard the Melvins. And he's like, these are kind of the guitar sounds I want. And I was like, at that time, I had just my 79 ES335.
Oh, I would have loved to hear you do Melvin's.
And I had no idea how I was going to get anywhere near that. So I asked... this was in San Francisco, and I asked, and I didn't know anybody in San Francisco who had a Marshall or knew how to get that sound. So long story short, a friend lent me one of those rack mount Marshall programmable preamps.
Yeah. Billy Gibbons likes those a lot.
Yeah. So I used that. going into a PV 212.
Sick.
I forget what the model is, but
studio chorus is the 210, and then is it the stage chorus that's
maybe
212?
It's like if PV made a Fender Twin or something
Or like a jazz chorus, like a PV, like
the PV's version of a JC120.
Yeah, basically. So, and then I had an Expandora pedal.
Amazing.
So this was my rig.
This sounds like a Billy Gibbons.
Yeah, wait a minute.
So I listen to that record now, and like for me, it's by far the heaviest guitar sounds that I've ever put on a record, and also the most reading I've ever had to do. It was Trevor wrote out a lot of notes, and it's Trevor and me. He's playing upright bass, sometimes through pedals and stuff, and Kenny Wallison on drums. So the record, if anyone wants to hear it, is called Debutantes and Centipedes by Trevor Dunn Trio Convulsant. And that's about it. And then a few years ago, a friend of mine lent me one of those Marshall 5-watt, I forget what it's called, but there's this little 5-watt Marshall amp that's incredible. It's a fairly modern day. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's just this little...
the mini Marshalls?
No. I forget what it's called, the something 5 or the 5 something. And it's kind of almost like if Marshall made a Pro Junior. It's just like a little basic little Marshall combo amp. And so I played that for a little bit. But what you're talking about, like opening up a Marshall, no, I have no experience with that.
It was a wild ride.
I bet.
Yeah.
I bet.
It's like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
You're so used to your Fenders. It's a comfortable relationship. It's like you understand each other. You understand, like, it's a safe space. And then you just get absolutely rocked by a Marshall.
I was just sort of thinking, as you guys were talking about, that each of our various experiences going out and touring, we kind of each run the gamut of amplification options that are available. You're often playing through, a backlined amp du jour most of the time, right?
Most of the time.
Mason, you're usually taking out a pretty complex rig with real amps and real speakers, and and it's your stuff that you're taking out on the road.
Yeah.
And I am generally these days going direct.
So cool. I think you win.
It's a challenge.
We're going direct. The whole band's going direct on this next Ryan Beatty tour.
Yeah.
We're just, and not in like no amp emulation or anything.
Like just straight to the board?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. Pedal steel, lap steel.
You can do that with those instruments.
Yeah, but I'm doing it with mine too.
I love that for you.
Yeah. I'm excited about it.
I'm very excited to hear how that feels. So are you going to be on in-ears or wedges?
Wedges. Well, actually, no. Jesse Honig, who runs 29 pedals and is an absolute genius.
Yes, he is.
Like, to a scary degree. He's developed a traveling rig for us so we can basically all have headphones on stage. We're doing as much as we've like, this whole camp, this band that I've like kind of put together this past year that's like worked with different artists and sometimes toured or not. It's like we when we go into a studio with an artist, it kind of is live. It's like we're doing studio stuff a lot like a live show where everyone's playing together. And then like when we're out playing live, it's like we try to do as much like a studio as possible. And so like Jesse's built he's come up with this system where we could all be on headphones and have independent mixes, but also we're going to lean on like a master mix for a lot of it so that we're equal in like what we're hearing.
Right. Almost as if you're in a space.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. With Buble, it was all Kemper. And
did you like it? Or did you notice it?
Oh, I noticed it.
Really?
It was Kempy.
So Kempy.
Straight to my in-ears. And then with the Jennies, I brought a pedal board with the Iridium at the end. And then there it was whatever wedges what the theater had, because they don't travel with their own sound system. So that was really interesting, because how comfortable I felt on stage that day depended on how the wedge felt.
Yeah.
Right. Because you were saying earlier that, when you play electric guitar to a great extent, you're playing the amp.
Totally.
And if you're playing Kemper on stage, to a great extent, you're playing the wedge. I mean, to the front of house guy, you're playing the front of house, but you're playing the wedge.
I was playing my in-ears.
Oh, you're playing your in-ears. Wow.
Which is the worst experience for guitar.
So gnarly. But, that tour was 106 shows over a year and a half.
That's crazy.
And so I had never played through. I basically learned how to use a Kemper and programmed all my own sound.
You did? Wow.
When I started playing in that band.
Yeah.
So it was intense. But you play a show 106 times, you're gonna get it pretty.
Yeah.
I learned how to trust that things were gonna go out the right way. Even if I was feeling kind of gnarly in the in-ears, I was adjusting to what I was hearing, but I also had to just, go for it sometimes. But when I had programmed those sounds, I had done it at my house through my studio monitors. So I could make sure that what I was giving front of house was what they needed to be getting.
Right.
But how that sounds is different in in-ears, because in-ears have their own power amps and drivers and yada, yada, yada. So there's a lot of trust at play in that scenario. And I would listen back to board mixes and, make notes for myself. But once I programmed the sounds and got them all together, I didn't really change anything very much. And that is kind of the beauty of the Kemper. Once you got it, and it stays there. And it's very consistent. And front of house loves that.
I bet. Yeah.
So in a situation like that, where it's a big show and there are a lot of moving parts,
Kemper's a necessary evil in that. I wouldn't even call it a necessary evil. I think it's a amazing tool for that level of production and that kind of tour.
Totally. I think next time we go out, I want to have, Fender's put out their Tone Master thing.
I love those, by the way.
And they have those Tone Master cabinets now that are meant for having a proper speaker for direct stuff, and it looks like a little hot rod.
That's what we've been using as monitors on stage with Ryan now.
Exactly.
Because they look like Fender amps, but
and you're hearing what you need to hear. Yeah. So I think the next time Bublé goes out, which probably won't be for a while, I wanna have one of those on stage so I can have a proper image of what I'm giving front of house.
Yeah. It should be called the Unkempt Tour. Well, what I was curious to know is, do you have some recipes that you've either worked up at home, like sounds, or recipes that you've cooked up in sessions that I can go back to this sound? Or in the heat of a session, is it always like the recipe book goes out the window and you just have to make something happen?
It just depends. Kind of depends on the producer and how much I've worked with them before. If you have a bag of tricks that you are used to, that work, or that serve songs or get people excited, it's well, let me just go ahead and pull the unisynth out, and it's oh my gosh, this is so cool and it's fun.
Right.
But then you work with someone like Tony, and he hears two notes of the unisynth, and he goes, that sounds too twee. And then I have to ask him what twee means.
Right.
And then he has to explain it. And that takes another 20 minutes. So it just depends on the room, and it depends on who you're working with. I can go in with as much, this is kind of the same thing as we were talking about. I can go in with all the intent that I want as far as ideas, or, if they sent you tracks before and if you listen to them, it's the Dano bass 6, that'd be cool on here. It's you have it so perfectly mapped out in your head.
Well, it's always the challenge if you're going to somebody else's place for a session and you don't exactly know what they have in mind. It's what do you bring? We don't have cartage. Do you have cartage?
No, one time I did a session where they asked me what the cartage fee was, like, because they were assuming I had cartages. Like, I think it's like $1,000, and so they just put they just snuck an extra $1,000 on there. But then I just came back the next day and got it all myself, But I didn't know. It's just like, I'll just do it.
Yeah. Well,
Greg Lee has cartage.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Brent Sutton has cartage.
We should just do a cartage podcast.
And it's just, we just have on all these heavies. And we're like, what's in your cartage rig?
Oh my God. Actually,
wouldn't that be fun?
That would be fun.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, the whole point being that intent, like, you can go to a session with all this stuff in mind, and then you get there and it's like, for some reason, like now the Dano Basics isn't translating the way you thought it would, and it's not sitting in the mix, or the artist is just like, I don't like that, and you have to just yes and forever. You have to keep it going. So you have just approaching that space creatively, but still professionally. It's like there's just no time in that chemistry to be like, well, what kind of cables do you have?
Yeah, I mean, way to kill the vibe.
Yeah,
you said something interesting that I want
can't be true.
I want to come back to. You said, in your experience, if if you have a shitty amp, then the guitar is like, it doesn't matter if you have a 59 Les Paul.
Yeah.
So when Adam and I were at the Fretboard Summit, we were getting our little duo set together in one of the classrooms at the Old Town School. And the amps in those classrooms were just those little Fender Frontman kind of solid state practice amps, right?
Yeah.
And Adam got out his Sunburst 335.
Classic.
Plugged, maybe you had your pedal board, 64 335.
Thank you.
Plugged it. I can't remember if you had your pedal board or not.
Not sure.
Doubt it. Knowing this guy right in sounded amazing. That's what you're going to say, right?
Yeah.
Well, guess what that means?
It ain't the car, it's the driver.
No, well, yeah, but also that means that amp's not shitty. It's shitty.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. But I remember you were saying, Adam, that you were like, man, I'm really struggling to get a good sound out of this amp, and I was like, I think you're good.
But that goes. This is where the coin has not fallen. It's just rolling, and they're both sides are still at play.
And how it feels back here, is so different than what's coming out
and what
on
you're
the other
receiving.
side. Apples and oranges,
truly.
And that's a hard lesson to learn. That I feel like with every gig. And sometimes it can go the other way. I can feel like, oh man, that felt really good. And then maybe I hear a recording back of the gig and I'm like,
I know. Isn't that awesome? When you think you played a great show, it's like, I was really feeling it tonight. And then you hear it back and it's like, oh, no one else was, and then the opposite where it's like, I remember we played in LA on this Ryan Beatty tour last year, and we had just crazy stage monitor issues where stuff was feeding back, and I feel like all of us had our heads down the whole set because it's just like, oh, this sounds
just trying to get through it.
And all it's the LA show, so your friends are there,
Yeah, sure,
and it's a really quiet and dynamic set, and so I swear all of this was just escaping out there. It was as miserable as I remember ever feeling on stage, just being like this fucking, But then of course afterwards, everyone was just like, that sounded unbelievable. And then you watch all the clips back and it did sound amazing. So what are we even doing here? It's like.
At a certain point, all you can really do is your best in the moment and try and not get too attached to anything.
Oh.
But is it, you think it's possible to learn to hear it with that third ear?
I wonder if you can, or if the exercise is in just constant acceptance and just playing through. It's like when you fuck up a solo on when you're younger, you fuck up and you go, you make a whole thing about it. Mm-hmm. And then you learn from people who are smarter than you, and they're like, just don't even acknowledge
it. Yeah.
Just keep going.
Right.
And that's like, no one can even, what's anyone going to do? And I kind of wonder if you can take that to the next step, and then maybe there's a next step after that, to where now you're internally not even acknowledging, the noise on stage or the feedback or the chaos, because the music is from within. So
totally. Having an experience where you feel like you've messed up royally and you think, oh God, I'm going to get fired, and you don't get fired. And I feel like once that's happened to you, like, talk about acceptance, like if you could have fired yourself and you didn't get fired.
Oh man, I should have been fired so many times.
Yeah.
Like, if it were up to me.
Yeah. But that's the thing, is it's not up to us. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
We're in the service of doing something, and if we're freaking out in our heads, that's
it's already, the whole thing's blown at that point.
Yeah. I think there's something to the idea of the third year. Like you said, even if you can't truly get there, to imagine it is at least one step closer to getting out of your own way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's ultimately a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a wrap. We got about a minute left on the thing.
Wait, really?
Well, this will keep going, but this is
Can I just share one
card.
quick story that I think has to do with Headspace? Shout out to Headspace. That's another
Headspace.com.
Yeah.
No, this really quick story about jazz trumpeter Louis Armstrong. This is a story. I don't know if it's true or just a story, but I've heard it and I love it. He was talking with a contemporary of his, Ruby Braff, and Ruby Braff said, "Man, Louis, I don't know how you do. You go out on tour. Sometimes you have these pickup bands. They're not that happening. How do you play so great with a pickup band?" And Louis said, "Well, I have a band in my head, and when the cats on stage aren't making it, I just kind of turn them down and I just turn up the band in my head." And then Ruby Braff pauses and he goes, "Well, who's in your band?" And Louis goes, "Oh, no, you got to get your own band." And I think, now in 2024, we could think about this of like gear or whatever. It's like so much of it is like in your head and what you turn up and what you turn down.
Wow. I didn't give a resolution, but if I were to, I would say, I think it's 3 things. 1, buy those 2 books Adam said. 2, show up for my community, like you said. 3, I need to respond to text messages better. And then the one that I actually keep thinking about is I had a tarot reading. Not intentionally. I was at a bar trying to drink, and someone gave me a tarot reading, which, is not what I wanted.
Was it somebody you knew?
Yeah, I mean, she was like the assistant for the producer, and we were all like celebrating after finishing a session.
Okay.
And she's very sweet, and she read, and I got my tarot card thing read or whatever, and she asked me what I was, you have to channel like what you want in your life, and then the cards will reveal. And the truth is, when I was thinking about it, it's like, for the first time in my guitar life, I really, really like what I'm doing. I really, really like the momentum of things that are happening right now. And especially after hanging out like on tour with like guys like Bob Glaub or Greg Lees, where it's just like these guys are, decades more experienced than I am, and they're still out here doing it. They're like they're killing it. They're playing like it's like God forbid I have another year like this or another decade. Like if I could just enjoy this for a little more instead of like, oh, I got to get, I feel like so much of my time, and like I used to drive Adam probably insane. I would ask him so many questions about like, how do I do this? Or how do I get better at this? I was so anxious for so long, so afraid for so long. about guitar. And for the first time, I feel really good about exactly where I'm at. And my buddy Luke Pelletier, we were rehearsing for one of his shows, and he's not a musician, really. He's a painter.
Brilliant painter.
Amazing painter. And he writes songs, we would talk for years about someday we're going to do a live show. And this last summer, we did our first one with the full band. And the rehearsals, given Luke had no experience, were rough for all of us, getting these songs, which are very abstract, and he's not approaching songwriting from a normal place. And so it was all over the place. It was kind of a shit show. And normally I would feel bummed, or I feel like we would all be like, oh, we got a lot to work on. But Luke he was lit up. He's like, you only get this little window to not be really good at something. Because eventually we'll have done a bunch of shows and we'll be really good at all of this. And it'll just be, easy.
Yeah.
But we get this little window right now where we're kind of bad at it. And it's like fun, and it's interesting. And I've thought about that so much, where it's like, I feel like I've had so much fun and I've gotten to do so much cool stuff already. And if I can let go of the anxiety that I've had about what I'm not doing or what I haven't gotten to do yet, you get to actually truly and just enjoy something, And so I've been thinking about this resolution. I've been thinking about trying to come up with I need to listen to a record every day, or I need to practice this. But in reality, it's like, if I had another year where I just got to enjoy guitar the way I have, I don't even know if this is resolution. Maybe it's a cop-out, but there's just a feeling that I've had of I got my tarot read, and she was just like, well, this is the Prince of fucking Towels or something. I don't know anything about tarot cards, but it's like, you have all these changes. You want this, but you're going to have to go through a big battle. And the whole time it's like, well, this is fucking bullshit, because I was actually just thinking I've had a nice time. I love my friends. I love that I get to play guitar. And why can't they give you a tarot reading that says, actually, you know what? It says here, you're fine. And I went just a year of feeling fine. So that's, I'm not life is a highway and I'm trying to enjoy the ride, but it's just guitar. I used to be so incredibly worried and so incredibly anxious and so just really scared that I was a fraud, or that I wasn't good, that there was some imaginary surface level to this ocean of feeling that I would never break. I would just always be just maybe under the surface. And this is the stuff I would tell myself, and I couldn't sleep at night. And for the first time as a musician, I don't have this incredible anxiety that I used to have. And so I just, as far as I thought about a resolution, I thought about that tarot reading, I thought about a lot of things. But if I had another year like the last one, I would be super lucky. So I'm kind of just wanting to enjoy the flow of what's happening. And if I get a little better at guitar along the way, even better. But I've tried for years to get better and I've been the same. So if I don't try, who knows?
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm at.
That's pretty good.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah,
That's
Mason.
beautiful.
There's one last thing. So Adam's here. He's in from New York.
We love Adam.
We love Adam. He, lived in LA for many years, which is when we both got to know him. And I think one thing that is really amazing, I'm going to make you super uncomfortable here. Adam's had a career playing the guitar, playing music, since we were in diapers.
Which wasn't even that long ago.
No, it wasn't.
For me specifically. But.
Last week. In our world, it can be very easy to have these sort of generational divides. You hang with your crew and you respect the older cats, but they maybe think of you as, young whippersnappers who...
Is that how you see us?
Stuff like that. But what I was going to say is what's so amazing about Adam as a dude in our little scene is that, and it's something that I want to resolve to be better at, is that you have always treated younger musicians with way less experience than you like peers. You guys had that gig for years.
True.
At Jones Coffee, which, you know, I had the great fortune to sub for one or both of you a few times.
Yeah, you did. Yeah,
you know, we did this book together, and it never once feels like older, younger, more experienced, lesser experienced. It always feels like we're all working for the same company. And I think that's a really beautiful thing that you have to offer. And I think we've both benefited a lot from that generosity. So I just wanted to...
I'm sure it's more than both of us too.
I'm absolutely sure it has. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah.
Because I think that is an experience that both of us have had with you, which has been super impactful for both of us.
Truly. I remember the first time I tried writing an email to Adam, and then I panicked. And I like slammed the laptop. It was like, he would never, you know. Yeah. Yeah, we're very lucky to have you. Well, thanks so much, everybody. I want to thank again our sponsors, Squarespace,
Casper Mattresses,
Casper Mattresses, Sherry's Berries, Jones Coffee, and Binge.
Should we go get some food then?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Fretboard Journal.
Thanks, Fretboard Journal.
We'll see you next time on the String Theory's Takeover.
Yep.
All right, that was String Theory's Takeover, part 2 of 4. I have no idea what awaits us next week or the week after, but it's going to be fun. Keep the feedback coming, podcast@fretboardjournal.com. Check out the String Theory's book. The link is in the show notes. And wish me luck at the 2024 NAMM show in Anaheim, California.